Hey everybody! I'm excited to get to um, share some different ideas with you guys, ways to grow your business. I think everybody is always interested in selling more. I've never met a dealer that said that they wish they were smaller and that they were selling less. Everybody wants to grow, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm an innovation manager here at Constellation Software. I was a customer of ours. I was one of our dealers for many years, and so my background is in dealership, not in software, and that's why I'm in the role that I am today. When we sold the family dealership, it made a lot of sense to continue the work that I was doing in the dealership, solving problems and trying to automate things. But instead of doing it for my dealership, it's now helping many dealerships. And so I'm excited to share some of my experiences, share things that I've picked up along the way. I've been in a whole lot of different courses and trainings and things. We've tried a lot of things. I've screwed up a ton of things over the years, and all of those things color what we're talking about today: doubling your business. Um, so without further ado, so we've got mounting challenges. Um, there are many folks, whenever I go to dealer meetings and, I'm at GIE and different places, when I talk with our dealers, I'm far from the oldest person that I run into, and also not the youngest either. But in my years in the industry, it seems like it maybe has never been more difficult to do business. A lot of mounting challenges. You got the supply chain. That's a new one. We've had supply chain issues off and on over the last 10 years, for the tractor guys.
Hi everyone, I think we might have just lost. I think we're just having some technical difficulties with Tim here. We'll get him back in just one moment.
Nope.
Hi Tim, you're back.
Hey, I'm back. Yay! We had a storm here, so I don't know if that messed us up, but well, I'll just pick back up. So supply chain issues have been crazy before, but I think they're unprecedented. What we're facing today, we're going to talk about some ways to operate in this new environment. Talking about one-time customers, people who have bought high-end equipment and aren't buying their parts and service from us. That's not a problem that's going away on its own, and it's a problem that today's internet economy has added to that problem that's existed for a long time. There's a lot of places that sell the things that we sell. I could buy True Fuel at my grocery store, the little quarts, for like 5 and a quarter, and we sold those for $8 at my counter. Which, in retrospect, that was a price sensitive product, but we like making money, and we sold a lot of them. So, but there's other places that sell these products, or our customers going and buying those there. You got the valley of the off season. For those of you in Texas like me, it's we're not going to have to mow for too much longer. It's starting to get cool. We don't really have a lot of cool season grass unless we're glutton for punishment and plant a cool season yard. And we kind of like the reprieve from not having to mow, but it's not great for shops. And so shops here in Texas and other areas, unless they work on things other than lawnmowers, things are going to get a little slow. But in the spring, it's overwhelming. So, the topic of today is doubling your sales. Doubling your sales. Okay. I'm not here today to talk about a silver bullet. All right. And I don't think any of you would be watching this if you thought that's what we were going to be talking about either. Right. There is no silver bullet to double your sales. There is no tool that you can buy and turn it on and cross your arms and your business doubles. It involves a lot of hard work, and it involves change. And there's a saying. I worked with my dad for many years, and he's my neighbor now. And we still drive tractors and flip a tractor here and there. And there's a saying that he always said in the dealership, and it's not original to him. I don't know who it's original to. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So, as things start to slow down, here in Q4 for many of you, some of you have got snow business that will keep you busy, but eventually, we're going to hit uh, some sort of a seasonal lull, and that's the time when we stop and think about what are we going to do different for next year. Um, what levers are we going to pull? What are we going to change? And so if we're interested in growing, even if we're not interested in doubling, if we're just interested in growing any amount, without making changes, eventually we're going to plateau. We're going to find bottlenecks, whatever those bottlenecks are. It may be that we don't have enough people. Oftentimes it's processes, and we can get a lot more out of the people that we have and the infrastructure that we have in place through recalibrating. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today really has nothing to do with texting, but we're going to talk about how texting is the conduit to your customer and how texting can eliminate those bottlenecks along the way so that as we make these changes, we're going to be poised to sell more, and we will sell more as we find more capacity. And by the way, there's nuggets here in this presentation. I think there's going to be something for you, whether you're working on hitting your first million in revenue or whether you're 100 million plus. And when I looked at the attendee list, I'm fairly certain that's kind of the range that we have. You don't have to be a small business to grow or even double, and you don't have to be some elaborate enterprise to go from 1 million to 2 million or 2 to 4 or 4 to 8. We did that, and I remember those years, and it's exhilarating to watch a business grow, even when there's external challenges. We need to recalibrate each department. So recalibrating, um, re-looking at what are the lines that we're carrying. If we've got all our eggs in one primary mower line and one handheld line, well, how many of you have been able to get 100% of what you've been ordering for stock, or even for your spring orders? How many of you have been told by your OEM, it's probably you may get half of what you order, so go ahead and order high. That's kind of the norm. So a lot of dealers are going, okay, um, how am I going to grow if I'm only going to get a percentage of what I'm ordering? So now what I'm hearing is a lot of OEMs also, though, are they're shipping what you order as long as it's sold. So we're going to talk about some ways to make sure what you're ordering is sold. But with whole goods and limited supply, what are we going to do? We got to pivot for profit. And I like that, maybe because it's an alliteration. So my colleague here, Dave Johnson, he is on our partnerships team that connects with the different OEM partners like Honda and Toro and Stens and so many of these major brands, these major players in the industry. Many of you carry these brands. Our goal is to work with the manufacturers to make it easier to be a dealer, because it ain't easy to be a dealer. And on the one hand, we wish we could make things a lot easier, and we can from a technology standpoint. So that's my job. That's our job, to help you automate things. Uh, but if it was easy to be a dealer, then everybody would be a dealer. And so we do like some barriers to entry. I mean, we don't want it to be as easy as being a lawn care service, and where just anybody can go buy something at a yard sale and they're in business, right? So there's a balance. But but setting some processes in place also, there's some levers you can pull too. And when processors are working great, um, it makes things a lot more enjoyable to do business. And so Dave likes to say, pivot for profit, pivot for profit. So diversify. We did a lot of trial and error in my dealership. And we did compact tractor, we did zero turn mowers, we did side by side UTVs, trailers, implements for the tractors, and a few other things. Handheld equipment. Of course, we had a shop, we had a parts department, and we did rental. We had multiple revenue streams, not just product lines. Within each product line, we had at least two brands. And I'm not saying that that is best for you. Um, Take diversification is something that you want to do very cautiously and very strategically, more so than just what's available in your area. Now, sometimes you're in an area where there's a lot of lines tied up, and it is what it is. You've got to work with what you've got, um, but many of you on here may have some major lines available, and so the question is: do I take on this major line that's in the top 10? And they're going to want me to take on a lot of inventory, or do I work with the smaller line that seems to be more dealer friendly and is not going to force a lot of inventory on me and will help me grow profitably? Those are determinations that you're going to have to make. But taking on a second brand, if you've got one brand, I don't ever recommend having like 3 or 4 brands of exactly the same product. Now, I have seen some models, and we did this where we had a brand that was really geared more toward consumer, and we had our commercial brand, and that works really well. But I'm never a fan of more than 2 good choices at just about any point. Now, supply is an issue, and you really think that, by having 3 lines, you're probably only going to have 2 choices at any given time. Maybe that's a decision that you make. But the point is diversify. If you're just carrying mowers, compact tractor is a great addition in the right areas, particularly if your target is like rural lifestylers, people with few acres. That's what we had. We found that the sales process was similar. Took a little bit longer because people were spending more money, but the margins were there. We made 15% margins on compact tractors, and we sold 500 to 600 of them when we scaled, when we grew. You can do that too. That was out of one store. Our second location was RV and trailer focused, and so out of one store, we would sell $14 million a year just in compact tractors, on top of the mower lines that we sold. And making good margins at that. It can be done. Rental is a big one right now, because rental, you're not expending product like you are when you're sending something out the door. It's coming back. And so a lot of folks in the industry are preaching that, and I would say check it out. It's also, as costs are going up, rental makes a lot of sense for folks, right? This is a big recalibration. Okay. Now we're going to get into streamlining within each department, but just we want to tackle the mindset. Every department is sales. Every client-facing department is sales. Okay. That's not usually how parts and service departments are set up in dealerships. The default, especially when we brought in people from other dealerships, and we love to hire people from other dealerships because there's so much that they already knew. We just had to train them on our systems, and sometimes they already knew our system. They'd used it at the last dealership. It was great. But parts and service counter staff tends to think like technicians. They're problem solvers, and that's not a bad thing, because they're complicated roles. Some of you may have a different idea than I do about this, but I would say the counter may be the most complicated role in the whole dealership. I mean, I'm no service technician. I do turn wrenches. I take about 3 times too long to fix anything. But I worked in the counter for years. I laid out parts department, parts rooms, single story, 2-story, doing things in sequence, doing things in bin location. The amount of the different skill sets and the contact switches that parts counter people run through is insane. So, we're just trying to put out fires oftentimes. We want to make sure we're making our money, and someone wants to look up, they want everything they need to rebuild this tractor engine, and there's no kit for it, and you got to look up everything individually. Ever been there and you do all this work? So one of the things I observed is that we would do all that work looking up every part to rebuild that compact tractor engine, and it'd be like $6,000 in parts, $5,000 in parts. And then we'd never hear from those people again. So, did they buy it from somebody else? Did they go, oh, you know what? That's probably more than I want to spend. You know what? Maybe, especially by the time you factor in labor, maybe I'm just going to go get a new one, or maybe I'm going to buy a short block, or who knows what their alternatives were. Well, our follow up by default was nil. We didn't follow up. We just, because the phone was always ringing. We got to get out of that mindset of just putting out fires and instead think like sales. So we're doing this work for the customer. We establish a relationship with them, even if it's just a little bit of rapport in a conversation. And we do this work. Hopefully, we're not just giving out all these part numbers that we spent 45 minutes looking up. But we give them a quote. We better follow up on that quote. We're going to talk about follow up as we talk about streamlining our sales process here in a little bit. But every department is sales. Service too. We would get people all the time, hey, what's your labor rate? What they're really trying to figure out is, what is this going to cost me to fix? And there's great answers for that, particularly if you flat rate. You can get out of that. Well, hey, what are you trying to do? What are we working on? It depends. And also, in my dealership, we had different labor rates depending on if it was a compact tractor versus if it was a zero-turn mower versus if it was a chainsaw. We just didn't charge $130 an hour to work on a chainsaw because nobody would do it, right? But if we're thinking like sales, we're steering that conversation that way, and we're quoting and we're following up. We're following up. So we got to recalibrate, think like that. And then the big thing, if you haven't been in pre-selling, and I'm talking to some dealers, they've been pre-selling since before pre-selling was cool. Those of you, especially if you carry a major ag line like an AGCO or a New Holland or a John Deere or something, you've been doing this anyway to a degree, because inevitably people want the one you don't have. And so what do? You go find it from another dealership or another location, but especially another dealership. And then you work out those things. Well, for those of us that have worked primarily in mower, that's kind of a new concept. We're used to being able to we're used to OEMs trying to load us up with twice what we really need, right? So this idea of selling from an empty wagon is a new concept. And we used to say you can't sell from an empty wagon. I'm here to tell you, you can. You can sell from an empty wagon. That doesn't mean you don't need to have inventory out there. I think you should. People need to be able to sit on the equipment. What people want to do, left to their own devices, is they want to come into the dealership, they want to sit on the seat, they want to drive it, and they want to go buy it online in some cases. Showrooming is what that's called. But when they've come into the dealership, that is an opportunity to sell them on why they need to buy from you. And even if the one that they don't have is not on the floor, chances are it's not going to be, in a lot of other places that they may think to go. So you got to sell them on why they need to buy from you. We're going to talk about what are the ways that you can pre-sell using texting. Texting is a tool. Texting is going to be a tool that's going to help you with each one of these things. So if we're in client-facing roles, we're thinking like salespeople, we have to recalibrate so that we have a sense of urgency. Okay. Not a sense of urgency to put out the next fire, sense of urgency to get back with the customer, to follow up with the customer, to close those deals that we worked. And anybody in sales knows you don't win them all, but you will win a lot more if you follow up and you ask for the sale. And time is one of the biggest things that kills deals. If you've worked in sales for any amount of time, it seems like sometimes time is never on your side. You're always behind the curve. And, if you worked in sales a long time, you love the adrenaline rush. We got all these leads. We got stuff going on, and we get antsy when there's stuff not going on. if you weren't cut out for sales, it's just a big stressor for you. And that's great. There's plenty of roles in the dealership for if that pace is not for you. I've been on both sides of that. I worked in sales in our dealership for many years, and the adrenaline rush is great, but it also is great to get off the front lines and like solve some problems and catch your breath. And but time can be your greatest enemy or your greatest ally, depending on how fast you are and what kind of sense of urgency that you have. And this is something we've got to instill in our teams to think about that. If our customers don't hear from us, there's somebody out there hungry enough that they're following up with these customers, and they're gonna get that deal. And that could be, it's not gonna be the box stores. The box stores kind of fold their arms and people go in and buy anyway or buy on their websites. But there are other dealers out there, and it might be, if you're an OPE shop, it may be the power sports shop up the road that happens to, they have focused more on training, they've honed in. You can be more agile than them. There's tools for that, but it starts with a mindset. Okay, we're going to talk about mindset and tools today. We got to streamline the sales process. So we got to set some ground rules. What is our sales process? Do we even have one? Do we know what a sales process is? Do we understand the stages and the steps from when we first meet somebody, whether that's online or whether they walk in the door, to all the different steps of the process where we've had a conversation with them, we've quoted them, and sometimes all these things happen all at once. They come in, they walk in, they meet the salesperson that's going to work with them, they get a quote, and they buy right then and there. But so often, especially with bigger ticket deals, these things span multiple days. In peak season, we studied this. The average mower deal was about 2 days, and the average compact tractor deal was about 5 days, and that was lead to close. The off season, those times doubled easily, and that wasn't factoring special orders. They were weighted into those averages. So factoring those in, an actual deal that didn't have a special order or anything like that. Oftentimes it was, we're setting up the deal on Monday or Tuesday and they're picking it up Friday or Saturday kind of thing. But a lot of variables there. But first we've got to identify the sales process, and then we go, what are the bottlenecks and how do we streamline? Okay. Follow-ups. So, it can be kind of like an F word. It's something we've got to, this is something we have to do every single day. Anybody that's in sales, the old saying, it's a cliche, fortune is in the follow-up, and it's so true. It's very common that I see in a lot of sales teams that salespeople, first of all, don't get back with people in the first 24 hours. And second of all, they only follow up with them maybe once. And the reality is it takes 5 to 7 follow-ups on a big ticket sale, typically. We luck into the ones where people come in and they're ready to write a check right then and there. But a lot of them are not that way. And if we're not winning those deals, somebody else is who's better at following up. The number one reason for lost deals in my dealership, we would record every time we did a lost deal. You know what it was? Couldn't get a hold of the customer. AKA, they ghosted us because we took too long to get back with them in a lot of cases. Now, customers ghost us anyway because that's what they do. They bought from somebody else. They're too embarrassed to tell us that. Their situation changed. They ran out of money. They decided to spend their money on something else. Who knows? There's a lot of different reasons. But oftentimes that was sort of the catch-all for, the lead went cold in essence. There's a Harvard Business Review study that says that leads are the hottest and your close rate will be the highest when you get back with them within 1 hour. And I'm not talking about autoresponders. You want to use an autoresponder, but that doesn't count because that's just letting the customer know you're still open. Your software is running. And it's a step. It could tell them things like if they filled out a lead form at 11 p.m., you're not getting back with them by midnight. not going to happen. Some of you will actually. Some of you are hustlers will reply to them anyway. I know some of you here on the webinar, but right, most of us, we've got some boundaries. The lead will be there in the morning. Nobody will have gotten with them. So if they filled out lead forms or reached out to 2 or 3 different dealers, they may hear from those other dealers, but not in the middle of the night. So we got a little bit of time. So we set our autoresponders to let them know, hey, we're closed, but we'll get back with you as soon as we get in the next business day. So, but a 1-hour response time, it can be done. It sounds impossible. And you know what? This is not like, you violate this occasionally, that everything goes to hell in a handbasket. If we have this mentality that leads are this urgent, I promise you, it will totally transform the way that you sell, versus, oh man, here's a pile of leads. It's 1 p.m. I'm in the middle of something. I gotta go get these serial numbers off these items. I'll get back to them in about 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes you're just overwhelmed. I get it, but understand that comes at an expense. And so one of the things you may want to look at is, if your salespeople cannot do this, why? What are they working on that they can't do their follow-ups? Even the first follow-up is the most important one. Initially, that's where people are deciding whether or not you even are interested in their business. So many times I see salespeople driving forklifts. I see salespeople doing a lot of non-sales things. They're running their own finance contracts. They're running the applications of the finance contracts. We quickly realized we got to a scale where we needed somebody else to run those, because we needed to run typically through more than one finance company. It may be that Sheffield didn't have the best offer that time, and Yardcard had a better one, or DLL, or one of the others, depending on the product. And so that takes time. And if you have grown to a point where you can't keep this up, and that's your bottleneck, think about an admin person that does that at least part-time, and maybe they do something else like inventory or accounting. Those are things to look at some point. And there are industry consultants that can help you set up an F&I department. That's a department, the revenue producing department in some of the dealership industries, big in power sports, big in marine, big in RV, big in automotive. It's not huge in power equipment and ag yet, but we're starting to see more of it. Some of it is because there's not a ton of insurance things that we can sell. But when you look at the F&I model, one of the big things that they do is they take the burden of a lot of the paperwork and things off of the people who need to be getting back with customers. And so 1-hour response time, if you can get anywhere close to this, and you're nowhere close to it right now, this may be the big game changer for you, seriously. And one of the ways you can do it is texting. If you pick up the phone and just try to call customers, how many of them don't answer the phone? Like most of them, because they're working and they're in places where they can't take calls. So the answer isn't don't call them, it's call them. And then when you get a voicemail, leave a voicemail, then text them. And typically one of those ways is going to reach them. If you have an email address, send them an email. Hit them in those different areas to make sure that they have heard from you. By the way, that doesn't count for 3 out of 5 or 6 or 7 follow-ups. That's one follow-up, okay, if they're all within a short proximity of each other. But we're reaching out to the customer the way that maybe they want to be reached out to. Maybe they prefer email, or they may prefer phone. And if they're really ready to buy, it needs to be a phone conversation. Texting is we're just getting to them, and we're getting them the information that they need. Texting is a really powerful way to do that, and get your salespeople doing that on mobile apps, because they're not sitting at the computer all the time. So our Target CRM is an app I designed that helps dealers do that. We can always talk about that offline. All leads texted. All leads texted. If they filled out a lead form on your website, then email them back, call them, then text them. Obviously, if you reach them by phone, no text is needed at that point, other than you may text them afterward and go, hey, great talking with you. By the way, we text. If you have any questions, text me back here. It's going to come right to me. there's a lot of ways that you can use texting in this process. But what you'll find is you're able to reach way more customers by texting, and it's a huge way to reach people. It's instant; they're all going to see it. People don't leave unread messages. The open rate is nigh into 100%, and for a lot of people, they can text where they can't take a call. It's huge. It could look something like this. Maybe they texted you to begin with, and this is how a lot of deals are starting. People are texting about big ticket things, not just the status of their parts. They're checking on what's a $40,000 what's a $40,000 tractor. They may not know it yet, but they want to get a price on a tractor. 40, 50 horse. Oh, by the way, I need a trailer. Do you offer delivery? You can answer a lot of these things over text, and it's instant. And it's a powerful way to nurture a lead along. Now, when they get far enough along, they need to give up a social security number. That's a phone conversation or an in-person thing. But text can move them along in the sales process. And by the way, I'll tell you, most of the dealers that I text today, there's a lot of dealers with text tools. It's crazy how many of them don't get back to me for more than a day on a text. You know how easy it is to send a text. And so there's just not the sense of urgency in a lot of places. But if you got that sense of urgency, this is a tool that gets you right in people's pockets very quickly. Another thing to think about, so we talked about texting our leads, pre-selling. So we did this in Target CRM, giving people away, once you've nurtured them along, get a deposit. We would get a deposit even if we had it in stock. Just if they weren't here signing a paper right now, let's get a deposit to hold this thing. So whether you're selling something that's on the floor and it's the only one that maybe you're going to have for the next 4 or 6 weeks or longer, you've got scarcity on your side. Get them to put a deposit on it. The easiest way to get that deposit without having to handle a bunch of credit card numbers over the phone, which is a disaster waiting to happen, text them a link. So we do that in Target CRM. You text them a link from their own device. They can pay by ACH or by credit card with our partners at Charge It Pro, Gravity Payments. And, so you've hooked them. They've got skin in the game. If you don't do that, if you don't lock them in, any number of things happens. The whole time is the enemy of sales. You're talking to them on Tuesday. All right, I'm going to come in on Saturday. If they tell you they're going to buy it on Saturday, now for some people, their word is as good as gold. For a lot of people, anything can happen between now and Saturday. But see, once they've paid and they've locked in, they're a lot less likely to flake out. Earnest money, it's a powerful tool, and it's certainly a powerful tool for pre-selling. And you can totally hook them by text. The other thing is, again, we're thinking all departments are like sales. Let's make it easy for people to reach their whoever their salesperson is. So set up direct lines to parts, to service, to rentals, to whole good sales. Don't funnel everything through a live person. I know there's a lot of dealers that do that. We did that for a long time. And what we found was that one person was a bottleneck. Now, you may be able to afford to have an army of receptionists, but in my experience, it doesn't even have to be that busy. I see that receptionist on the line, and I see like all the salespeople on the line. You can only talk to one customer on the phone at a time, and the phones continue to ring. And a lot of those calls were for parts or service. So set up direct lines. Most voice over IP providers do this. They don't even charge you anything extra, or if they do, it's minuscule. They're called DIDs, direct lines. And if your texting software is worth its salt, and this was something that we did from the outset because we wanted to set up our dealers to where they could do that. In Target CRM, when you create a department like parts or service, you have created a hotline. Now, if you've text enabled a landline for that, or your VoIP provider has a DID you want to text enable, we can override that and put in your specific number. But a hotline that if people call it, it goes straight to parts. If they text it, it goes straight to parts. They're not going through a gatekeeper. That makes things a lot faster. I talked to a 2-location Kubota dealership a few months back, and they had all their text from every department at both locations all funneling through one person. Holy cow. Don't do that. That's just, I understand why they wanted to do that, because they wanted to be in, they wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. But you can have that visibility without having to be the gatekeeper for every new conversation that comes in. A big one, also talking about streamlining, survey all your customers by text. We do this in Target. You check out a customer, they get a text afterward after they check out. Unless they're in there like every single day. There's some oversending controls, but they get a text after checking out that asks them to fill out a short survey. It literally takes 30 seconds to do it. It's that fast. They click a link, they open it up. On a scale of 0 to 10, they rate their likelihood to recommend you to others. And only the happy customers now, the happy customers are referred on to Google to build a crazy, awesome reputation like what P&P Small Engines has here. And these folks have been dealers with us for years, and they've been on Target CRM since its infancy. And I need to update this screenshot. They've got well over 200 views now. They've been, and a lot of them are driven by parts. They do a phenomenal parts business. But every customer, whether they're buying spark plugs, they're buying mowers, tractors, jet skis, apparel, accessories, whatever it is you're selling. We've got dealers that attending here that are all across the board in what they're selling. Google weighs them all the same in terms of the rating. Whether they spend $1 or $100,000, their review is weighted the same in the count, in the rating. But it's an important part of the sales process because, one, this is where we meet new customers. Anybody who's thinking about doing business with us checks out our reviews first. Everybody does. The statistics are well north of 90%. Plus, when we're surveying people and we're asking them for comments, by the way, they're not always going to be great. Sometimes we're going to have some constructive criticism, sometimes not so constructive criticism. Listening to the voice of the customer is incredible, and we can work out these issues while at the same time building our reputation. And if your texting software is worth its salt, it does this hands-free, where you look at the feedback, you work on the processes, but you're not having to push a button to send these. It just happens. And these reviews build up over time. So you're building your web presence, you're building your SEO, you're listening to the voice of the customer, and we're going to talk about what does this do for the customer experience here in a bit. So if we've recalibrated, and so we've brought in whatever lines we're going to bring in, if any. It may be we're to a point where we've got the lines we need. We just need to work out some kinks in our process. We've streamlined our sales process. Well, now we need to work on this issue, getting the customer to remember us. And I love this quote. It's not your customer's job to remember you, but our obligation to make sure they don't forget us. How can we do that? So as we're filling the lead pipeline, we fill the lead pipeline. Once we've got a slick pipeline for those leads to go through, something where we've got a good control of the sales process. And we're going to talk about this. A big part of filling the lead pipeline is not new customers. It's working on those customers that maybe are forgetting us. I remember earlier I was talking about those one-time customers. We all have them. And sometimes they just didn't think about us. Sometimes maybe we weren't the easiest to do business with. Maybe it's hard to reach us. Maybe it's hard to order from us. As we're working out these things, especially the communication side of these things, some of those things can be easily undone. Sometimes, though, it's just a top of mind awareness issue. So there's a powerful lever that we can pull to connect with our customers. And a big trend right now is website texting. Now, a few years ago, it was live chat. There's still a lot of different dealerships and businesses that have live chat on the website. And live chat it's got a lot of pros to it. It can be powerful, because the idea is your traffic on your website. By the way, 99 out of 100 people that visit your website in most cases um, leave. They don't reach out, they don't buy, they're on your site and then they're gone. Why? For a lot of different reasons. But in some cases, it wasn't clear what they needed to do. I've been on a lot of dealer websites in the last year where there was information about product on the website and no way to reach anybody. Like I literally had to go back to Google to get a phone number, or there was, or buried somewhere in the site was a contact form, but there was no call to action on the product. Where if I go, this is the one, I want it, and there's no way to reach anybody about it. In a lot of cases, there's no prices either. Well, I'm going to go find some place where I can reach somebody and or get a price. Um, so a really powerful tool that helps capture more of those people even than live chat is website texting. So this is the process right now. People land on it, and if you've got a good website that's got calls to action on there, and this is one of our dealers I stole these screen grabs off of. Every one of their products has get a quote. This is one of the major website providers. But then what pops up is this massive form that asks for way too much information. By the way, this is the reason some people bounce. They go, "Ooh, they don't need my phone number, address, and all this other stuff." They're not ready to give up all that. Now, if you look closely, there's these little asterisks on the side that say only first, last, and email are required fields. But the more form fields that customers see, the more likely they are to bounce. Sometimes one form field can up your bounce rate 5% is what I've seen in some metrics. I don't know about dealership customer. I don't have enough data for that. I just know that this is too much. Many of our forms, I see some forms, it's not even a little pop-up window. It literally, you've moved away from your product page onto a complete other full page form just to put in your name and phone number and email address and tell them what you're interested in. It's too much. This is powerful. A button that people can click, whether they're on their phone, which most of them will be, or their laptop or tablet or desktop or whatever they're on. They click a button, they put in their name and their email, or their name and their phone number and a message. That's it. They get a text on their phone automatically, and they come in as a lead. And if they leave the website, you're in their pocket because they got a text. You can continue to text them. By the way, you can call them as follow up, which is a fantastic thing to do to reinforce your texting. And live chat can't do this. Now there are live chat apps that ask people for name and email address and maybe phone number beforehand. Statistically, people don't enter those in before doing a live chat. They're a lot more likely to bounce. And so it's just interesting. But if they're thinking, okay, I'm going to text, that's a really powerful way they can give just enough information to reach somebody, and instantly they can reach somebody. So we put these buttons on our dealer websites. They are known to double conversion rates on websites. That's not going to do that. That's not a guarantee on every single person's website. But there's no silver bullet. Here's what this does. This is on every single page of your site when you put this on there. It's always easy to find a way to reach somebody, basically instantly. And that makes a lot more sense than this, where I'm going to fill out this quote form and someone's going to get back to me maybe at some point. If any of you have read some of the Pied Piper surveys and the secret shoppers that fill out these things, most places take way more than a day to get back to people on these. And customers know that, but they get that if they text somebody, they're more likely to get a response back faster. Now, again, I have texted a lot of dealers that are starting to put these buttons up that I may as well have filled out that quote form. So again, just because you have the tool doesn't fix the problem if the mindset's not there. If you've got people watching this, and I would say probably in that dealer's case, they're probably not using the mobile app. They probably were away from their computer for 3 or 4 hours. They get back. Oh, here we go. Here's, I got a text I got to respond to. All of these things work together, but you got to use the tools the way they're designed to be used. And they can make reaching customers really, really quick. So put this on your website. It will put leads on in your pipeline when you've got a texting button, a way for people to reach you without having to camp out on your website. But it's not the only way to get leads. It's one tool. All right. Another big one: target new customers. So a lot of the marketing resources that we see out there are geared toward new customers. Google Ads is the most prominent one. Tractor House, Craigslist. Um, it's probably impossible for anybody who's attending this to find the ceiling on the number of leads that you could get from Google. We've experimented in my dealership. Man, we try, $300 a day, $500 a day, $1,200 a day, and the leads just went up exponentially. We just had that much more traffic. Now, we were casting a wide net. We weren't just going within 20 miles of the dealership, mind you. But we were able to get in front of lots of new customers. And there's a lot of great ways to get in front of new customers. I would say Google Ads is a big one. This gets your traffic to your site, send them to your website, to particular product pages, and you've got this pipeline and the sales process set up to handle these new leads now. Hopefully you've recalibrated and you've got some product and things to sell, or you're prepared to pre-sell to these people that want products, even if you don't have them on the floor yet. So you see how all these things work together. So Google Ads is a powerful way, maybe the best way, to get more people onto your website. And certainly as you're working out your SEO, to where people are just organically finding your site without you having to pay for that traffic, that's the holy grail too. But Google Ads is something you can literally turn it on and the leads just start coming in, because Google is everywhere and everybody Googles, right? Posting inventory to Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and these different places like that. Craigslist was what I found. I would have thought they'd have been irrelevant by now, but they're not. They are still big ticket products are still selling on there, and not just the used stuff, new stuff too. And you can set up on Craigslist. You can put in a cell phone number where people can text you. Tractor House, you can set up where people can text you. Equipment Trader Online, Boat Trader, RV Trader, a lot of these marketplaces, you can set a call to action where people can text you. You will get more leads than if you just give them a way to email you. And put prices on your ads unless your OEM absolutely forbids it. Your conversion rate will skyrocket if you don't have prices now and you move to putting prices. Yes, your competitors will see your prices. That's okay. You're going to outsell them because you're faster than them. If you don't put prices on there, people bounce from your website, and that's been proven time and time again. So there's ways to target new customers. I wish I could do a whole webinar just on that. There's so much to talk about there. We don't have time. We're running out of time. Target your existing customers by mining the data that's in your dealer management systems. People are starting to think, I'm talking with dealers who are doing winter service on mowers now. They're starting now through the end of February. They're doing these service specials. This is text marketing is something that's pretty untapped in our industry, and there are ways, with our software, with Target CRM, you can mine the data that's in Ideal, that's in Infinity, and here very shortly in Aspen, where you can send targeted text messages out to customers based on where they're located and when they bought, and if they're coming up on the end of their warranty and things like that. Really, really powerful ways. If they've been buying whole goods and they're not buying from your shop, those one-time customers, what I'm talking about, we can retrain customers, and it's not going to make them all buy, but it is a way to reach these customers and target these customers in a way that Google and Facebook and Tractor House and Craigslist and all these others can't. Those are focused on new business. Retargeting your existing customers is a lever that most dealers aren't pulling because it's been difficult. So we talked about lead texting, targeting new customers, mining the data. Another big one. I don't have time to. We got to get to Q&A here in a minute. But another big one is asking for referrals. 2 weeks after they make a purchase, reach out to everybody that's bought from you and ask if they know anybody else that's in the market. And I've heard of salespeople that even they'll follow up with them 6 months down the line, making sure this mower that you got is doing what you need it to do. By the way, is there anybody that you can refer? And you have a referral gift that if this referred customer buys, the person who did the referring should get something. There's something for everybody involved. Referrals are powerful. You can do this by text. Really, really, that's a powerful free thing that you can do that literally just takes a minute, a couple of minutes here and there. And but if somebody is referred and they buy, it's cheaper than you spending money marketing to get them in, for sure. And they're more likely to buy. So there's this compound effect of all these things working together. There's not, just one of these things that we talked about. If you just put a button on your website, you're not doubling your business automatically. Probably not. It could happen, but I'm going to say you're going to need to do a number of different things. If we're talking about doubling our business, we need to make a lot of incremental changes and some major changes. Product line would be a major change. Incremental change might be if we're getting back to people in 3 hours, maybe we need to, let's get back to them in 1 hour or less, right? But all of these things in conjunction with one another have a compound effect, and the net effect is serious growth. You could do a lot more than double your business. I remember the period in my dealership from 2012 to 2016, we quadrupled. Now, you got to be careful growing too fast. I wouldn't try to quadruple overnight, and I would probably not recommend quadrupling in 4 years. But if you've got good advisors along the way and you're working closely with, say, some industry consultants, and you got a great CPA, you might be able to do so profitably. But what I would say is, you pull these levers, you can grow very successfully, very quickly, and you can grow faster and build a bigger and better business than the folks up the road if you take these principles into account. We can talk more about this. I'm going to plug my one-on-one sessions on Friday. I still have a few open, and we can always talk offline if Friday doesn't work for you. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. In case you can't tell, I eat this for breakfast. But I'm going to plug Target CRM because this is what I live and breathe every day. I work with dealers on this. I designed the software from the ground up, and with a fabulous team here at Constellation, specifically to solve problems and help dealers pull levers to reach their customers. We do two-way texting with mobile apps, text people payment links, targeted text and email marketing, automating asking for those Google reviews with the surveys, and putting that lead to text button on the website. And we can always dive into this in a one-on-one or at a later time so you can see how this would work in your business, in the context of your business. Sometimes I talk with dealers and they're just in a place where they're ready to do a couple of these things. A lot of dealers are like, hey, let's put some things on autopilot. Let's automate some stuff. I'm ready to monetize this mountain of data that's in my system. I'm ready to start pre-selling with text to pay and things like that. We can help you, especially while things are slowing down in a lot of these areas. We can help you to recalibrate and streamline in a big way with the CRM. All right, we've got a few minutes for questions. And while those are coming out, I'm going to definitely book a session with me. Take down my email address, connect with me here on Socio on the Virtual Summit app. I'm here all week, and connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn too if you're on either of those. I spend a lot of time talking with our dealers, especially in the Facebook groups. And there's a lot of good networking that goes on there. And I've had many a late night conversation with a dealer as we're talking through the challenges that they're facing or the lines they're deliberating or whatever. I love it. I love talking about this stuff. Questions? Can you access Target CRM from the cell phone? Yes. There are native mobile apps that you pull up, that you download rather, onto iPhones, Android devices, tablets. If you've got a small tablet, like a 7 or 8 inch tablet, we've got some folks with pickup and delivery drivers that use those. I'm a big believer in whether you're using our texting software or somebody else's, in the world that we live in, we're not sitting at our computers most of the time, unless it's like, after hours and the gates closed and we're just trying to catch up on paperwork. Well, then we may be sitting at the computer for hours. But typically, most of the client-facing roles were on our feet. We step from behind the counter, we go climb on the trailer with the customer and hunt for the model and serial number, or we're walking back into parts rooms, or we're walking with the customer out onto the yard if we've got a bunch of equipment stored outside, or even if everything's inside. And if everything's inside, you got a big building. So taking your text conversations with you, and keeping an eye on them when you're away from your computer for a long time, especially, is a powerful way to make sure that you're responding to those leads within that 1 hour. Good question. What else? If you think of something, we've got just a couple more minutes here, and if you end up thinking of something after this session is over, again, reach out to me, whether that's in the one-on-one. Oh, here we go. We had a couple come in. We use Twilio and Infinity now. Does Target CRM work with that, or is it a separate thing? Target CRM can work with your existing numbers. All those controls that you have in Infinity will work with Target CRM. And so we can bring in your message history and all of that, and eliminate the Twilio bill as well. And so we can talk about how that works. But so everything that you're doing right now, whether that's the automated messages that go out, as well as anything that you would manually send out, then would send through Target. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Catherine asks, is the employee's personal cell phone number given out? No. And this is the big thing. So we don't want to have to go buy a bunch of phones for our employees. Well, some of you have done that. I talked with some dealers where they provide a work phone. It's a fantastic perk. We gave a stipend out in my dealership even when we had our employees texting. The key is, with our app, it uses your business number. And that's important for multiple reasons. Probably the biggest pet peeve is people don't want to give out their cell phone numbers and then get pinged on nights and weekends. But the other thing is, if the employee leaves and if they've been using their personal cell phone, using then the personal cell phone number, all those contacts they were texting and all those conversations leave with the employee. There's no way for you to keep that data in-house. But if they're using a business texting app, all the customers that are texting, if they're not already in your system, they're added into the system. So you're capturing all of those contacts, and all those conversations stay with the dealership, even if the employee leaves. And you can always just disable that app where they can't log in anymore. And it protects yours and your employees' personal cell phone numbers. So people text it pings the app. People call you, it rings the business line. Now, I have talked with some dealers where they're still using Google Voice or Jive or something where they've got, the app rings their phone, but it's something that they can turn off, or they have it set to where they don't get called on nights and weekends. So the idea is, if they text you, it goes to the app. If they call, it goes wherever you have your phone routed. And we work with a lot of different, good old landline systems or voice over IP. Another question: does Target CRM reconcile new contact numbers with the customer's information in Aspen? Yeah, we match off of the phone number. So and we look at, and if that phone number was in a landline field and there's nothing in the cell phone field, we move that phone number out of the landline field into the cell phone field. So it cleans up your texting. As you're texting customers, it's cleaning up the data. They're in Aspen, Infinity, Ideal, across any of those. So we don't like duplicate contacts. We have enough of them in the systems as it is. So we'll match those contacts, and but if they're not, we don't see that contact in there, we add them in, and so we capture a lot of those customers that would otherwise maybe never make it into our systems, especially through some standalone texting app where you end up with a mountain of you get a whole separate customer list in there that like overlaps some with what's in your main system, but may not.